Welcome to Guru School's channel. This is Kumar Gaurav, Be Agile Scrum Trainer. Today we are going to learn three items, okay? Velocity, capacity, story points in Agile Scrum. We need to understand what is velocity, what is capacity, what is story points, and the usage of it into any sprint. So understand why we choose any velocity, why we define velocity, what is individual velocity and team velocity. So we are going to talk on those terms. So understand, in very layman term, you're going to understand these all. When you will research and search about it, you will find very complex example. But for your purpose, I'm going to really refine it well and simplify it very well. So understand, for any example, for any task to start with, we require a reference point of time. Okay, so reference is needed, and when reference are there, then we can call it as relative reference. Okay, relative reference, and in terms of estimation, we call it relative estimation. However, people tend to identify absolute estimation, which is really not possible, and that's the reason we call it as estimation, and it has to be relative. To make it very easy and simplified to define the roadmap, so what exactly happened when we talk about the capacity, we can talk in terms of hours. Okay, hours to complete some item. Okay, how long it will take to complete some item. Okay, and when we are talking about some item, understand that we need to define an item. Say for example, we have got a product backlog items. Okay, and it has got multiple features, multiple tasks to be completed. All right, so what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to draw something. So there are multiple uses to multiple, backlog items. You are watching here the backlog items. Okay, so these are few backlog items. What happens from these list? We discuss this. We try to define it. We try to define it, and we need to work on it in sprint planning meeting. So in sprint planning meeting, it's not product owner's job. Okay, it's a, excuse me, this is sprint planning meeting. I'm going to bring in front of you. This is sprint planning meeting. Okay, and in this meeting, you can have a reference. Okay, why reference is needed? Because any estimation has to come up with the user story point, and user story point is a definition or unit to define any feature or any user story. It is always comes in Fibonacci series, starts with 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. It continues to graduate further. Okay, so what exactly happens? Story points are given to every high value backlog item from the PBI, from the product backlog items. Okay, when it is pulled up inside the sprint planning meeting, what exactly happens? Product owner comes in, he gives a reference of some previously done sprint. Okay, previously done sprint. So what exactly happens? Say for example, previously done sprint, it took around how much? Say for example, 3 users story point. Okay, so on an average, if we'll consider that earlier sprint and its story point was, just I'm giving you an example, it was for 19 user story point. Okay, so not 3, I'm just giving a reference that the total sprint got completed into 19 user story point. Okay, so it was a 19 user story point, and based on this, other features or other user stories will be defined. Say for example, I'm going to give you example. Say for example, there are one piece of paper, and out of that paper, one person has to create a paper plane. Okay, say for example, it takes around 1 hour to create one paper plane and you have got 100 paper planes. Okay, so of course the story point applied over here will be higher. Okay, because it has got 100. But the Scrum task and in Agile framework, Agile mode, it is always recommended and encouraged to simplify the things and bring the tiniest activity in presence and in visibility, and that's the reason we need to consider along with story point the capacity and velocity as well. Say for example, uh, the 19 user story point was for earlier completed sprint. Okay, and what all the features were there, product owner will give a reference to that. Based on this, what is going to happen, whatever items you have pulled inside sprint planning meeting to be discussed, every single user story will be given a number. Okay, and again that will graduate as per Fibonacci series. And what is going to happen, say for example, one user story or one sprint had say for example 5 user story. Okay, I'm just giving you example, and it took around 19 story point to be completed. And what is going to happen, the entire sprint or on an average, every user story will be calculated, and we find that it is around somewhere 3 user story point was taken for one user story to be completed. And based on that, how complex it was, because we have to also consider complexity into consideration, and that's the reason based on one user story and similar kind of user story or bigger block of that user story is coming into sprint planning meeting, we are going to give them a user story point, of course based on this reference user story. So and that's the reason we can come up with the relative estimation once it is given. Once all the user story points has been taken up into the consideration, what also we need to take up consider this in mind, at many places what is going to happen, our release dates are decided. Okay, so release dates are decided, and based on that we need to come up with the velocity as well. So how velocity will be calculated? Velocity will be calculated with the user story point taken into past few sprints. Say for example, in one of the sprint it was 19 user story point, in another sprint it was say for example 21 user story point, and in one it was around say just give me a second, it was around 12 user story point. I'm just giving a number. Okay, all right. So in one, it took around, say here also, it took around 21 user story point. I'm just giving. So the calculation will happen based on all these story point. The average has to be pulled out. So 19, 21, and 21. So 42 and 100, 42 and 10 becomes 52, and 9 becomes 62. Okay, so 52 and 9 becomes 61. So when you will bring the average of it, it becomes 20 user story point. So for one sprint, on an average, it takes around 20 story point. Okay, so 20 story point, and when you are pulling out the user story into sprint planning meeting, and product owner has given the reference, it's BS task or Scrum Master task to facilitate the estimation for remaining user story or the picked up user story. And they need to make sure that none of the sprint will go beyond 20 user story point, because in one sprint based on the based on the length of the sprint, that how long your sprint, your organization has decided, whether it is going to be one sprint, whether it is going to be 1 week sprint, 2 week sprint, or 4 week sprint, or whatever it is. Okay, so it is considered that, say for example, your sprint is of 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks you can deliver only user story with the 20 user story point, because just now you have calculated the velocity based on the previous 3 or 5 completed sprints, and you have brought the average of it by dividing it by 3 or 5. So this is how you have calculated the velocity. And now, considering the release date, what you are going to plan, that how many sprints it should work, because the items are so many and release date is this. How many effort you may have, how many capacity you have. Capacity always comes in terms of hours when I am talking about hours. So always it is advised that take out 2.5 hours, or at least 2 hours from your daily work. Say for example, you are working for 8 hours, but 2 hours will go in the meetings and all in the ceremonies. So it can be considered, if in your team there are 6 people, consider 5. Okay, because one could turn out to be a scrum master, and 5 have to contribute. And also, while this contribution happens, the sometime, our user story point for particular sprint may turn down, because considering the unplanned holidays or planned holidays, something which is coming before the release dates. Okay, so I hope I have clarified. Velocity is nothing but it's an average of past done sprint. Okay, and capacity is nothing but it's hours you can quote, as I say, that always chop down 2 hours, and it could be the 6 hours productivity. So say for example, if 5 people are contributing every single day for 6 hours, and you have defined 20 user story point to be completed, then 5 into 20, it becomes 100 points. Okay, 100 user story point for one sprint, which is called as team velocity. And when you just consider every past done sprint together, and when you bring its average, it is called as an individual velocity. Considering the average, we further plan the entire release. So user story point technique is a very well-known estimation. Sometimes goes towards the t-shirt sizing technique estimation as well. But yeah, definitely user story point technique helps to define, to reach to the hours, and can be easily conveyed to the client based on the release date defined, that what all velocity is there, what all capacity will be there, how many users story points has been taken into the consideration. I hope you love this video. I hope you love the understanding. In case you have any question, you can mention that in the comment. And also, to know more in the details, I would like to invite you for the detailed session on velocity estimation, capacity, and user story points in Be Agile Scrum Track. Thank you so much for listening. This was Kumar Gaurav, trainer of Be Agile Scrum Track. Try to simplify for you. Thank you so much.